Women entrepreneurship. It is booming. How do we make it last? We'll talk about that today on Culture Builder Live. Hey, I'm Chris Wink. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Technically, the news organization with a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. Friends of the show will know we've been reporting over the last 3.5 years of a sudden, dramatic uptick in business incorporation. After decades of terminal decline in entrepreneurship in the United States, it's booming. And when you unpack the numbers, women, particularly Black women, are really leading that. That's been one of the most dramatic shifts after decades of decline where we've seen entrepreneurship booming. The big question now is, how does this not just become a momentary change in the trend, but instead a long-term change? I'm here to talk about that today. I have Jamie Sears, co-head of Impact at UBS Americas, and Omi Bell, the founder and CEO of Black Girl Ventures. Jamie and Omi, thank you guys for being here.
Hi.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We got a lot that I want to get to in a little bit of time. Omi, I've interviewed you, followed you guys, technically followed you for a long time. Can you start me off? Do you have your going opinion on what really happened here during the pandemic era, where we saw a giant boom in entrepreneurship, particularly among women, particularly among Black women? You got that narrative in your mind about why did it suddenly go bonkers?
Yeah, you know what, Chris? Thank you for having me. And I'm always before my time. So like when you say suddenly or like, oh my God, this moment happened, I think that what I've been doing for a long time is if you just give people access, give people the keys, they will build the ship, build the boat, they will build the ark, they will do the thing. And that has historically been the case. And I think the pandemic just opened up a huge window for people to be able to do their thing. No holds barred. It shifted how we think everything has to happen. We used to think you had to go into an office. We used to think you couldn't always meet virtually. And then here we are living in this other world. And so it's like, hey, well, what can we do with it? And people just started creating.
Jamie, you were part of a major report that we had technically just produced called The Inclusion Edge on inclusive entrepreneurship. And the big question we were after was, hey, did a decade plus of inclusive entrepreneurship funding actually do a thing? Did we set a foundation up and then, as Omi just notes, a window opened and the foundation was there? The narrative from economists, researchers, and academics that probably yes, some of this inclusive entrepreneurship programming did set a foundation. It took a while for then, as Omi said, the window to open and folks to jump in. You've been at this game 10, 15 years. You've funded programs, you've led programs, you've founded programs. Kind of curious, do you have early lessons on what you think we're supposed to be taking now post-pandemic? Like, if we want to launch the program that supports women entrepreneurship for people of color, Black women, are you learning lessons about what other folks should know now that we didn't know in, say, 2015 that works to push things forward?
Yes. And I always start with this, explaining a little bit of why we're invested in this space and why we've done it for a decade. At UBS, our theory of impact is that entrepreneurship can be a pathway to ownership, to asset building and generational wealth, which is why we've been investing to make entrepreneurship more inclusive, and our efforts have been focused on women and people of color. And that's because of demonstrated and longstanding gender and racial inequities. And the generational wealth piece is actually because that represents to us lasting and sustainable, durable change for both those individuals and communities. In terms of like the things that we've learned through this work that I would share with people who are wanting to invest more in these programs and, you know, based on lessons, I think we need to do what we ask of entrepreneurs, which is focus on our customer and meet their needs, and recognizing that those needs change. We've done that. We had a female founder program that we started in 2015. We've had 1.0, 2.0, and now we're on our third version of it. I think the realization that the markets change and we need to be responsive to what the needs are. And as there are more programs and resources, that is all well and good, but I think we realize that the ecosystem now has a lot of fragmented resources. And so I think Black Girl Ventures, and other people that we've partnered with in the past, what they're trying to do is help entrepreneurs make sense of that. So I don't think we need more accelerator programs. What we need is a more connected and coherent ecosystem for founders. And so I would really lean into where people have their strengths. They have, unique and differentiating knowledge and business ecosystems and networks that they could be putting to work, and partner with others that are also trying to do the work and are great at what they do. And the last thing in this is connected to conversations we've been having is, if you're going to start something or invest more, stay committed and really stay the course. I think the world needs what women are building. The world needs what women of color are building. And not only are women making majority of household purchasing decisions, they, as underserved customers, are able to apply the wealth of knowledge, experience, and talent that can be tapped to the benefit of us all. And I think that that would be the one thing in the times that we're living in. I think staying the course is really important.
Staying the course, Jamie, is interesting. Jamie brings up a couple of things that I'd love to hear you riff on. One, we technically have followed this narrative. In the early 2000s, entrepreneurship was really down, and it wasn't yet a big conversation around economic development strategy. Then Great Recession happens. We have a real reckoning with what we feel like the American economy should look like. And the 2010s had this surge. It was eras of disruption. The tech platforms were magic. It was an exploding conversation on bringing entrepreneurship to cities around this country, regions, small towns around this country. But this is when technically these earliest days, I remember these conversations, but we're like, but nothing's really happening. It just kept being like every year was less and less entrepreneurship. We were organizing more events, more programs, as Jamie alluded to, more accelerators, and just nothing happened. Every year it just got less and less and less. And we talked in our newsroom how strange it was that every year we were talking more and less was happening. And then again, like suddenly I actually wrote the story in like March 2020 that's like, dang, recession, entrepreneurship is down. What's going to happen now? Is this like the end? And then the exact opposite happens, and everything changes. And Jamie alluded to now it's become a big conversation around opposing wealth inequality, or something. Well, maybe this is one of our tools. If we make entrepreneurship more accessible, if we talk about this as a cudgel, maybe it's something that could do this work. You've been at this for a while. I mean, like, are you optimistic about entrepreneurship, ownership economy stuff being a real tool for wealth and economy? How optimistic do you remain, I suppose, is my real question this deep into your own work?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of like is it's almost like and I'm going to use storm not in a negative sense, but just like it was on the horizon. So when you say like the entrepreneurship was going down, but then in 2016 the news comes out that Black women are starting businesses at 6 times the national average, right? So like it was going down for who?
Yeah.
Like when we say like it was going down for one group of people, in the way that I think sort of research and traditional systems looked at what entrepreneurship was. However, what was on the rise was sort of this back end, kind of like this bubbling, was this whole group of Black and brown women who were just moving toward like, okay, business ownership is an option for us. These workplaces are not as much of an option for us. So I think that it was coming, but the way that traditional systems looked at what business is, that's what we were noting the decline, right? And so I'll say that, staying the course, Jamie said, I was like, oh, that's a good point. I think when it comes to impact and causing making sure there are like family foundations and corporate foundations and philanthropy overall doesn't say, oh, well, hey, it's happening now. We can go over here. Making sure that doesn't happen is the key. Like, we need everybody in the finance world to be thinking about this constantly. We need philanthropy to be constantly funding and not pull back and go, oh, it's now solved. I think historically, if we were to like look behind the scenes and like all the different ups and downs of our economy, we'll see where that has happened multiple times. Like, oh, we solved that. Now we can just, no. We need to stay the course. We need to keep focusing on impact. We need to keep defining and redefining what impact might mean according to what sectors have grown and what's happening in the markets. So I think that entrepreneurship was always bubbling. And I think that, people saying the course is going to be significant in terms of keeping it bubbling. We're talking about like growth versus establishing. More people now have established an LLC, but where are we pushing them to grow? Are they going to grow? Is that real? My theory is that the internet gurus of the world, the influencers that we thought was going to die out, who are now kind of running things, they have actually influenced people to create more LLCs. So now people are like, I'm gonna get my LLC even if I don't do anything with it yet. People are like, oh, well, I'm gonna take on a contract. I'm not gonna take it on as me. I'm gonna take it on as an LLC. So I think more people are in that business creation. Will we see business growth? It's gonna be a matter of if we keep that impact, these impact efforts growing. If we keep showing people that you can do this. I do believe I'm a serial optimist, by the way, but it was my path. So there's no other way for me to believe. I know it firsthand that, prior to me starting Black Girl Ventures, prior to me starting the print shop that I had, I was on government assistance. I had Section 8. I had food stamps. I had great jobs. I was a K-12 educator. I worked for the Patent and Trademark Office. I'm an engineer. The reality is that America is not built for a single parent with 2 kids. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not built for a single. I mean, right now, the way inflation is working, I feel like it's built for anybody. I'm saying it to say that it is still a real path out of poverty. It is the next layer of workforce development, if you ask me. The upskilling and reskilling, the government pours into those programs and they don't have entrepreneurship attached. And I think that's a huge misstep.
You hit on a couple things I'd love to get with in our final minutes here. So, I mean, you're dead on that. We did start seeing rates of business incorporation among Black women begin to uptick around that period. It just so dramatically popped in this pandemic era. It's the most stark chart that I've followed in 15 years of covering entrepreneurial like trends. But you hit on a big idea there where in Technically Zone reporting, interviewing people, it shows up in the data that we hear a ton of examples of folks who add that LLC. We've watched now a third of people under 35, I think, participate in the freelancer economy in some form. So there is like that, I have the LLC for, I drive Uber sometimes, or I sell some of my works, or I flip real estate. That internet guru is real, that like enough people have in their TikTok feed, someone hollering at them to start an LLC, that people have done it, but they tend to stay small. They're the vast majority of incorporated entities in the United States are non-employer, meaning it's basically a single fund to process taxes. It's not necessarily growing. 2 points show up in there when you look at the survey data. Some folks report, hey, but that works for me. It's flexible. Particularly women are disproportionately likely to say that I use this to navigate a flexible workplace to take a disproportionate share of childcare, to take a disproportionate share of family care. It's one of the drivers of why we see gender wealth inequality remain where it is, income inequality where it is. So the research literature shows the same thing, that entrepreneurship has let people get more flexibility and it's given people optionality. But though the representation of starting businesses look demographically similar to the United States, the trends of growing businesses look less demographically similar. That's the difference. So maybe, Jamie, I'll throw it to you as someone who's been in this game also for a while and funded and started and led programs. When you think about that idea that starting businesses look increasingly representative to the American demographic mix, but growing companies doesn't. When you look at the landscape, where do you think we're supposed to go with inclusive entrepreneurship work or women entrepreneurship funded? Is that informing how you think about the next stage of this work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always think about things a bit layered. I mean, I think that people that realized for a variety of reasons that the traditional workforce or private sector, whatever sector they're working in, was not working for them, and they wanted to bet on themselves, and they also wanted to build something and own something. I think the idea of taking that first step with the incorporation or business plan or whatever it might be, that's probably different from then having the, sometimes it's early money, and, dreaming really big about what's possible when, when it's challenging out there. I think that when you think about companies that are built for higher growth and they need some upfront capital, the friends and family money that people are often being able to utilize to test their ideas or to develop a prototype or to, make a hire, to have flexibility is, it's not available for the reasons of a lot of the, gender and racial wealth inequality. So I think that there are some specific places that if you were thinking about, why are we not talking about how to grow the companies? I do think part of it is that, people have a lot of talent to offer, but may not be turning that into the business. And there are a lot more programs to help them do that. And it's connecting those resources together and more money to help people get their early starts, because that is never that if we're talking about like launch to growth to exits, for example, it's very difficult to even be along that pipeline if the early funding is not there. And I will say that Melissa Bradley from 1863 Ventures has done some really interesting research, and I would say check it out. I think I think we glorify bootstrapping, and what it's actually done is taken a huge toll on people financially. And I think that is what causes financially, emotionally. I think that's sort of what causes when people start a company, once they sort of get into it. I think that these companies need to be invested in. These founders deserve to be invested in. I think that a gap causes, I think, people to do what they need to do a lot of times, which is bootstrapping. But, people are seriously over leveraging, I think, themselves. And I don't think that's fair if trying to do is have the shot.
That's interesting. I have gone over, I gotta let you guys go, but Omi, I wonder if I can give you a final word. Is there something in how we programmatic or think about boosting women entrepreneurship that isn't yet on the record, or we're not paying close enough attention to? Do you walk away from this pandemic boom time with a new set of focuses or a new set of guidance for other folks who are either building programs, running programs, or thinking about women entrepreneurship?
Really quick, I think it's been said before, but it needs to keep coming back that we're hyper focused on training. I agree with Jamie that we don't need more accelerators. Hyper focused on training and under focused on resourcing. And I think like resourcing also means social capital, that sort of word of mouth, things that are passed from person to person that you don't necessarily learn just by heads down in a business, I think is key. And so I think that letting more women into the networks, more women on boards, more women investors, I think more women in the room, I think it's part of it, right? It won't solve everything, but I think it's part of it, because then we can start to have the knowledge. There's some knowledge gap that you won't get through training, that you will only get through being in a room. And we're not giving that as much light, I think, as we need to.
Well said. On that note, I gotta let you guys go. Thank you for letting me go a little bit over. Jamie Sears from UBS, Omi Bell from Black Girl Ventures. We'll drop links below, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Jamie and Omi. See everybody.